Welcome back, guys. We are officially ready for part 2 of our lesson 12 Ready Workbook lesson. So, we're on page 122. So, if you don't have your Ready Workbook out, take a minute, pause the video, make sure to gather your materials. You need your Ready Workbook. You need a pen or a pencil to write with, and a yellow highlighter would be useful also if you like to highlight things as we go. So, once again, we're on page 122. Right, now that you've got your materials, hopefully let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite the title of my lesson at the top of the workbook page. And the title of this lesson is Determining Word Meanings. Determining word meanings. All right, so let's go ahead and break this down really quick. So we know determining means to figure something out. So you're figuring something out. And our word meanings here, we have two different types of word meanings we're focusing on for this lesson, and those are going to be connotative and figurative. And just to refresh ourselves on what connotative and figurative mean, what they are made up of, I'm going to make myself some notes down here to go along with those. So I know that figurative has to do with different types of figurative language. So, different types of figurative language that we're going to focus on. We've got simile, metaphor, personification, idioms, allusions, and hyperboles. And our connotative word meaning focuses on the feeling behind the word. So, word's feeling. And since we are focusing on word meanings, we really have to pay attention to the tone of a word or the phrase and the overall tone in general. So I'm going to make myself a note up here about tone. We've got positive tone, negative tone, and neutral tone, and those are symbols we use to represent those. So tone kind of depends on word choice, and we can have strong or weak word choice, strong or weak connotation, depending on those things. Oop. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our directions now that we have appropriately broken down the title of our lesson. So, our directions say to read the beginning of a poem that describes the speaker's view of London as viewed from a bridge. So, we have to read the beginning of a poem that describes the speaker's view of London as viewed from a bridge. So, we know that we're dealing with a poem. So, a poem is fiction, not real, right? So we know that it's fiction. Um, it's probably going to have some kind of rhyme scheme, maybe. Let me make myself a couple notes. And we know that based on the directions, we already know the setting of this poem, right? So, we know that our view is of London from a bridge. So we already have our setting here for us. So that's nice to have. So out below, it tells us our genre. And when it tells you the genre, you need to make sure you pay specific attention. And the genre of this poem is a lyric poem. So we've already taken some source book notes on lyric poems, so you already know a little bit about it. But let's just do a little refresher, right? So we know it's a poem, so that automatically means that it's fiction. And lyric poems usually have a very strong pattern. within them. There is some kind of pattern, some kind of repetition. So there is also going to be some kind of rhyme and rhythm to a lyric poem. So rhythm and rhyme. And a lyric poem, typically in a lyric poem, the poet is expressing their thoughts and feelings. Now, they may not do it in the first person, they may have a narrator, but they are expressing thoughts and feelings. Okay. So now we are actually ready to go ahead and look at the poem. So the first thing we have to do is look at our title. And since this is our title, I'm going to box it in and I want you guys to do the same. The title of this poem is Composed Upon Westminster Bridge. So, the bridge that we're on apparently is the bridge in Westminster. It's the Westminster Bridge. If you didn't know, Westminster is a place in London. So, this is the bridge that we're on. And let's look at that word composed. What does composed mean? So we know composed means to have something it's made up of something, right? So like humans are composed of cells, right? So we are made up of cells. So composed means to be made up of something. Make myself a note of that. Now, based on the title, it's kind of hard to tell whether or not there's positive, negative, or neutral tone associated with this title. There's nothing in it that's very positive, nothing is particularly negative. So I'm gonna say for the most part, this title is pretty neutral, right? But we'll see, we'll pick it out more as we go along. So before we can read, we need to make sure that we number our lines. So whenever we are numbering our lines in a poem, typically it's done in sets of 5. If you want to number it all the way 1 through however many lines we have, that's okay. I'm just going to go ahead and count out and do it in increments of 5. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my 5th line, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 lines total. And I know that this is not the entire poem because it says that it's continued down at the bottom. So I know that today I'm only going to be dealing with the first 8 lines. And so now that I have figured out how many lines I've got to look at, I'm going to work through and pick out my rhyme scheme. So we've done rhyme scheme before. But it's been a little bit, so let's kind of work our way through it and make sure we remember how to pick out the rhyme scheme of a poem. So we do rhyme scheme in alphabetical order, all the way A through Z if necessary, and we do rhyme scheme by looking at the last word of each line of the poem. So let's start with line 1. Our last word is fair. So fair. Since this is the first word that we're looking at, it automatically gets an A because we're going in alphabetical order, right? So the next word on the next line, so the last word on the next line is by. So I need to figure out, do fair and by rhyme? Those do not sound anything like each other. So I'm going to say they do not rhyme. And because they don't rhyme, I'm going to give this a letter B because I'm keeping it in alphabetical order. So the next word I have to look at is majesty on line 3. So majesty. Majesty doesn't rhyme with fair, right? But let's look at the word by. Majesty, by. Well, those don't actually rhyme, but they have the same ending sound. That Y at the end is very similar. So even though it's not an identical rhyme, because they have that same ending, Majesty also gets a letter B. So now we're moving on to line 4, and we've got the word where. So we have to determine, does where rhyme with fair? That sounds pretty rhymey to me, right? And where doesn't rhyme with by or majesty, so where gets a letter A, because since it rhymes, we have to go back to the word it rhymes to and give it that same letter. Okay, so next we have line 5, The last word is bear. Does bear rhyme with fair? That's pretty good, right? So fair, where, bear, those all rhyme. So this gets the letter A again because it rhymes with those words. So next we have line 6. The last word is lie. So lie. Does lie rhyme with fair? Mm? Does lie rhyme with buy? That's pretty close, right? So lie gets the letter B because it rhymes with by and also majesty, right? So we're going to move on to line number 7. We've got sky, sky, by, lie. Those rhyme. So if you think that this one should get the letter B as well, you would be correct. Okay, so now line number 8, our last one. The last word that we have to look at is air. So air, fair, where, bear. This gets an A, right? Because it rhymes with all the words that we have assigned the letter A previously. So we have just figured out the rhyme scheme for the first 8 lines of this poem. So the rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, B, B, A. If you notice the repetition in that, you would be doing well because it's repeating itself, right? So after line 4, it splits and then it repeats itself. So A, B, B, A is our rhyme scheme. All right, so next we are gonna actually, now that we figured out our rhyme scheme and we've numbered our lines, we are ready to read. So I'm gonna read this to you. As I'm reading, I want you to look for the tone. Like, think about tone while I'm reading and see if you think that this tone has positive, negative, or neutral. See what you can think of as I'm reading it to you. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull he be of soul who could pass by, a sight so touching in its majesty. This city now doth like a garment wear, the beauty of the morning, silent, bare, ships, towers, domes, theatres, and temples lie, open into the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Okay, so that's our poem composed upon a Westminster Bridge. So let's see if we can what we can think about with tone that's associated with this. So there are several words that are jumping out to me. Let's look at the first 4 lines first and then we'll do the last 4. So let's look first at line 1. Earth is not anything to show more fair. What does fair mean? We've talked about it before. Fair means that it's something beautiful, something really remarkable to behold. So this word fair has positive connotation. Not Yep, it has positive tone associated with it, right? So dull would he be of soul who could pass by? Well, it's talking about how if you could just pass it by, you would have a dull soul, right? So the word dull here, it's kind of got some negative, right? But it's saying if you don't notice the beauty, you would have a dull soul. A sight so touching in its majesty. So, majesty is definitely more positive. Whenever you call someone your majesty, usually it's associated with someone royal, someone you respect. So, that has positive tone. The city now doth like a garment wear. Well, this one doesn't have a lot of words that are jumping out to me, but if you notice here, we have some figurative language, like a garment. This is a simile because it is comparing using like or as, and we'll kind of get to back to this just a little, but I wanted to go ahead and point it out to you. All right, so let's look at the last 5 lines. The beauty of the morning, silent there. So we know that it's calling the morning beautiful, right? So that's automatically positive. So ships, towers, domes, theaters, and temples lie. That's more neutral so on that one. So open unto the fields and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. So bright and glittering, those both have positive connotation, right? If something's bright and glittering, it's usually beautiful. So I'm going to say the overall tone, so far at least, is pretty positive. Okay, so now that we have analyzed the poem, let's let's scroll down a little bit and see what we have to do next. So we have to explore how to answer this question. How does the speaker use figurative language to make comparisons? And what is the effect? So this is what we were doing in part 1. We have to figure out why does the author, the speaker, use the figurative language to make comparisons? And what point does that get across to us as the reader? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to think about what connection the speaker makes between a garment, which is a piece of clothing, and the beauty of the morning. So between a garment and the beauty of the morning. So we have to think about how those two things are connected. What do these two unlike things have in common? So we have to figure out what they have in common. So we also have to think about how the speaker personifies the city or gives it human-like qualities. And this is personification. I'm sorry, guys. My pen is being a little difficult. There we go. So, personification, giving the city human like qualities. Because the city is not an alive human being, right? It's just building streets, a lot of hustle bustle. It's not alive breathing, right? So, if you give it human like characteristics or qualities, that's personification. All right, so we are thinking about the similarities a garment would have with the beauty of the morning. So, what do those two things have in common? So, before we actually get to our chart, I want to go up to the passage one more time to our poem and read you that section where we mark the simile, where it compares the garment to the beauty of the morning. So, that's starting on line 4 to line 5. So, I'll read it to us. This city now doth like a garment wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. So it's saying the garment like wears the beauty of the city wears the beauty of the morning, kind of like a garment in a way. So let's go ahead and look down to our chart below. So we have to use what we know about figurative language to complete this chart. So our goal is to complete the chart. So let's look at our example first. Split